Greetings, Holy Ones. I am your brother Anunnaki, and today this is part 1 in a playlist series of videos called the Kathara Biospiritual Healing System, which is level 1, and is part of the scientific information in these Emerald Order teachings, also called the innerchristos Law of One teachings. In this video, we'll be discussing what is Kathara healing, what is the divine blueprint, the anatomy of your spiritual body and consciousness, anatomy of physical matter, the template of energy called the Kathara Grid, about the primal life force currents coming from Source God, about soul integration, about the horrible DNA genetic mutation on Earth that affects all life, the distortions of science, also about Atlantis, and the Lucifer rebellion from 25,500 BC, the holographic framework of reality, the New Age channeling movement, the original base 12 genetic alphabet versus today's mutated base 4 genetic alphabet, also about junk DNA, something called the Checkerboard DNA Mutation, and about avatar consciousness. These are the things that we'll be talking about today in this video. Now, I've placed some time codes in the video description below, so if you guys or anyone wants to just skip to a different part, please do so. But for the rest of you, we'll be starting here at the beginning, so thank you for being here. And consider subscribing to this channel if you like what you hear and want to learn more about spiritual awakening and spiritual ascension. So this is actually a large workshop, and that is why I'm going to be breaking it down into like smaller videos like this one, so it's easier to study and understand and reference. So this is the Kathara Healing Level 1 workshop out of 4 levels. So there will be future workshops for Kathara 2, 3, and 4. So there's a lot of information that we're going to be covering throughout this workshop playlist series. So make sure you save this playlist, and we'll be teaching you the knowledge of creation, of consciousness, energy dynamics, and DNA regenesis for your spiritual evolution and ascension. So this is the program that we're going to be exploring. It's called Kathara Biospiritual Healing System. Now, this is a healing program that is built on what is called divine blueprint science. This is an ancient science that is more advanced in its way than what is called science in our world today, yet it is completely translatable into what we call science today. What is most important about this Kathara Biospiritual Healing System is that, obviously we have a mental body of some sort, a mind that is aware of having a physical body. And most of us hope at least we have a spiritual body, whatever that may be, because that's our connection to something larger than here, bigger than here. That which gives us meaning or purpose. Some people call that connection God. Some people call it spirit. Some people don't call it anything, but they sense that living life force that they're part of. So not everybody realizes that the body is just like a very tiny part of the anatomy of the human being. There's a lot more to the human. It's only a very tiny part of the anatomy of the physical matter. We're in a system that we have our bodies here, but we are also in a world that appears to be three-dimensionally solid. It appears to be made of particles. And our scientists tell us about quarks and all sorts of like subatomic particles, protons, electrons, all those things. So there's obviously something out here called matter. But behind this thing called matter, both the matter that our bodies are made of and the matter that the planet is made of, there is much more behind the scenes in the energy structure of matter, okay? There is an energy structure, or you call it a template of energy, called the Kathara Grid. What we're learning throughout the series. It is through many components of this Kathara grid that makes it possible for a spiritual being that was once non-manifest to become manifest in matter. And the power of the human being as a spiritual creation exists in those realms of anatomy that are beyond what we see in the three-dimensional form. That's where we live, the 3D. So these are areas of our anatomy that directs our physical bodies and what they will do. They direct our birth process, our aging process, our growth process. They direct whether we will be healthy or sick. If we don't understand the anatomy that exists behind the matter, we're going to be at the mercy of the matter. If our body gets old, we're not going to know what to do to change that, or to stop it, or to fix it. If our body gets sick, we're going to try to fix it from the outside in. But if there's something wrong in the templates underneath the matter, we're not going to be able to create a permanent fix or a permanent healing. The Kathara Biospiritual Healing System takes us into the core template of matter. It takes us not only into the levels of healing or like holistic healing that are identified in things like Chinese acupuncture, which deal with meridian lines in the body, or with Reiki systems of healing, which deal with the subtle energy bodies and chakras and using symbol codes to work with them. Beneath all those levels of your body anatomy and your subtle body anatomy, like your aura, your chakras, there is a core structure that governs what your chakras are going to do, what your meridian lines are going to do, and what even your matter particles are going to do. What's fascinating about learning your anatomy, it's like we've been like going through thousands of years, right? Thinking that we only had like, let's say, one hand and one leg, and we've been trying to like get along in our life with that one hand and one leg, not realizing, well, there's another whole, half of our body that if we learn how to use it, we would be able to walk and function much better, right? So the other half of our body, the anatomy that we have not been using for the past 25,000 years, especially, has been called the Kathara Grid. The primal life force currents that others call chi, prana, or ki are what feed energy to our subtle energy systems. And these primal life force currents also come through our body template, okay, to manifest what we call our physical body. But they don't only manifest the physical form. And this is why we call Kathara a bio, referring to biology, DNA, spiritual healing system. Spirit, consciousness, the consciousness that makes you aware of who you are today, that helps you to remember who you were yesterday, who you were as a child, that part of you that allows you to visualize what you might like to become, where you might like to go in the future. This part of you that you call consciousness is your spirit. It's right here with you. It's not separate from you. The Kathara Grid template of energy that your body matter manifests on is also the template of energy that your consciousness manifests into dimensionality through. So it's the Kathara Grid template that gets you into the body. If there are Kathara template problems within the human body, which right now there are on a global scale, and there have been for 25,000 years, which is a time period the Guardians call the Luciferian Rebellion. And we'll talk more about that in other workshops, because if there are problems in the Kathara Grid template of energy, there will not only be problems with the matter form, there will also be problems with the consciousness as it tries to get into that matter form. And right now, the way things are working in our planetary system, in our world, is when we are in spirit form, before we enter a process called fetal integration, also called soul integration, where we as spirit, consciousness, come into a body vehicle and to have an incarnation here, we have a problem with the body pattern here because of the Kathara Grid template distortions, which means as soon as the soul consciousness comes into the body and intertwines itself with the DNA template, with the gene code, the DNA template literally shuts off 90% of the incoming soul consciousness. The part that's left here, the 10% of consciousness, that's what grows. This is what becomes the person you remember yourself as a baby being, the person that you grow to be here. But the rest of who you are, your higher soul identity, which is your true identity, who you were when you came in, is who you still are. But you don't remember it, because you can't remember the soul memory of yourself as a spirit directly that comes in, because the body acts as a light switch. It's turning most of that current off. Your consciousness is not coming through, only 10%. Now, the current of your consciousness, if you had it fully embodied as a human being with a human template, you would have a minimum of 12 dimensions of consciousness, which is the human's original divine blueprint. Okay, not just seeing three-dimensional reality field, but you will have access and move your consciousness and your body through 12 dimensions of matter, which means different matter density levels. And remember, there's 5 density matters, not just carbon matter. We were once upon a time a species that was immortal. Our bodies did not die. Death is not a natural condition for our original prototype human body form. But however, on Earth, we've been dying for a very long time on this planet. And there's a reason why we've been dying on this planet. And that reason is a genetic mutation. It's a genetic mutation that has been rendered on the deepest core template level of the skeletal bodies, which I've been talking about, the Kathara Grid. And because of that, literally the way our chromosome structures evolved, the way our gene code in chemical terms evolves, it's not what it was intended to be. Okay? It is not functioning on its original divine blueprint. So we find ourselves trapped as consciousness, all humans who come to Earth, in a mortal body. That's the form we're stuck with, and that is a very short lifespan that progressively deteriorates before our eyes. By the time we're 35 years old, we start to feel it. We start to feel what's called the death hormone. It starts to kick in and it starts to make us tired. When 10 years ago, that same thing didn't make us tired. The body literally starts to kill itself. It poisons itself with chemical toxins. Science here calls this normal. Okay, they call it the aging process. They tell us that we're supposed to accept the fact that birth, death, and paying taxes are about the only thing that's certain in this existence. Science here accepts death and what it's supposed to be like for a human form, because science here is based on a very small amount of partial knowledge, because the ancient knowledge was hidden from the races on this planet. It was hidden in order to make us easier to control, in order to keep us from remembering, the rest of ourselves while we were here. Now, when we get into the future workshops, we'll get into the reasons and who did this and why have we been, as a race, suffering for 25,000 years? Why, if we're immortal, why in the world have we been dying all these years? Why don't we remember who we are? If we're somebody special, if something different than what we perceive as animals, and we actually have this huge amount of consciousness called spirit that has the answers to everything, if we only remember. It is directly connected to God. It remembers itself as God. Why don't we know this? Okay, why does it seem like something we wish for? Hope is there, right? But we have no evidence to really support. Okay, we're not getting support for those topics. These are the reasons why these things took place, and the reasons are huge. We're in the middle of a big drama right now, you guys, on this planet. It's not a drama that started yesterday. It's a drama that started in a period of time that's known as the Atlantean period. Now, we hear legends of Atlantis coming up in the culture these days, and it's still a fictional place in terms of mainstream experts telling us what our past was, okay? Mainstream experts base their interpretation of what they think our past was on records and bones that they found and guesses they've made as to what those might mean if they put them together in certain ways. Right now, our cultures are being fed through mainstream science. They're being fed partial facts and guesses as if they were absolute truth, as if they were proven, when in fact, the assumptions that science frequently comes up with by looking at evidence but not having any idea or what to compare it to, we're being taught assumptions as core truths, and we're learning to accept that. Some of us are. We're learning to accept we came out of animals, probably apes, Darwinian theory. But now there's this little argument in the scientific community. No, maybe it wasn't out of apes. Maybe rather something that swam in the waters once upon a time and then grew limbs and hands and things. Flippers became limbs, and we walked up on the land and became air breathers. and the real one, right? The Big Bang Theory. I mean, if you look at that, it eventually leads you right back down that we started as pond scum and somehow managed to manifest ourselves up on land, and there we are. The next generation must have been a progression through from pond scum to fish thing to ape thing into what we call human. If you look at the amount of stretch it takes in concepts to come up with that idea as your core truth, you get some idea of what science is doing right now. And there are reasons why science is doing what it is doing, which gets into something called Illuminati, which are a body of people on this planet that have been doing things with information for many thousands of years. Thousands, okay, in order to control the large amounts of people in a negative way. We'll talk about Illuminati in a future workshop. But in this workshop, we're going to talk about what's most important to you as a person first, before we deal with the big picture drama that all of us are in the middle of right now. Because believe me, you'll want to know all this stuff before you find out what we're in the middle of right now. So it doesn't scare you to death, okay? I mean, there's no reason to be afraid of the big picture drama if you already know these solutions that we're going to be talking about, okay? So right here, we're going to be going through giving you some of the solutions first. And the solutions have to do with understanding what your body is, what your mind is, what your consciousness is, what your spirit and all of its higher levels are, where they're located, and how to get 100% of your spirit instead of that 10% back into your body so you can start having a better life experience here. And Kathara healing is the beginning process of learning how to do that, because we will be learning, literally the anatomy, your spiritual energetic anatomy, the structure of your anatomy on a 15 dimensions. Now, 15 dimensions, it's real funny. If you look at science again, they have all sorts of theories, right? There's the unified field theory, there's the quantum theory. Theory implies guess because they don't know. This information that is being presented here, you will be shown the structure of 15-dimensional physics. You will be shown the structures that exist within those structures that allows us to create what's called the hologram of matter. We talk about the holographic universe here on Christos Avatar. This is not a theory. Now, the scientists will love to argue with me, and I'm sure, well, how do you know it's not a theory, right? Everything is a theory. No, it isn't. Fortunately, listen very carefully. There are levels of higher reality which science doesn't acknowledge, and there are beings that exist in those levels of higher reality that have not been involved with the distortions of our consciousness and our biology that have taken place on this planet. They're the ones who have held the original creation records that literally detail the spiritualized science by which creation itself brought into manifestation by a common source intelligence that many people choose to call God. Well, science doesn't talk about God. So it's not a God that sits on a big throne either and has a white beard and stuff, okay? It's a consciousness. We were created in the image of God. That doesn't mean we're all men. That was a man twist, okay? Humans created that one. Okay, we were created in the image of God as consciousness, as spirit, as awareized energy. Now, we're going to be learning about the structure of how we as awareized energy got ourselves into this predicament of being stuck in a mortal body with only 10% of our soul's consciousness. We're going to learn 15-dimensional structure. And I will teach this to you as an absolute, not as a theory. Now, you have, the absolute free will choice to take anything I say and consider it a theory, a guess or a belief, as opposed to something that is known. But in my life, you guys, in my world, these things are known. And others who are on this path are in that knowing. So I teach you with a lot of conviction because I'm not teaching you guesses. I'm teaching you what I've known and found to be true. And you can't fake this. It takes a lot of conviction to teach this kind of spiritual or what other people would call supernatural, paranormal stuff. It takes a knowing and a desire to share this truth that has created a freedom in my life and some of you. And for that, because I've been taught these things and I've used these technologies. And I've found levels of my own consciousness got them into my body, okay, and have learned to do things with my consciousness. And we're beginning to learn how to do that, okay, with our bodies that are science fiction compared to what science tells you is possible, the mainstream science, okay? I know that these are the freedom teachings, and if I can at least get some of that across to each one of you, and each one of you will get a little piece that's, all your own. And it'll mean something different to every one of you because, every one of you came here for a different reason. There's a need that brought every one of you here, a core need that you might not even know on a conscious level. But there was like some piece of information that you were looking for, your soul was looking for. And that will be your next step to grab a hold of so you can make a difference and start to find your power again. Because what's happened on this planet to everybody is that we've lost our power. Right now, we walk around in a world that appears to inflict itself on us. Have you noticed? From the moment we take our first breath, we appear to be in a world that happens to us, not a world that we create. Okay, we appear to have all sorts of things coming at us constantly. There is a very real appearance when you're stuck here. We start to realize, the context of reality or the framework of reality that is creating this. Well, we start to realize this is a hologram field. What's that? It's a thought form field. That means theoretically, my thoughts should be able to influence it, right? Theoretically. Well, they do. If your DNA imprint was working the way it was designed to work, by its divine blueprint that we all have, by the original blueprint that Source God created humans to be, you would be able to literally manifest everything directly into matter, with no problems at all. That is our natural organic potential, Vatos family, okay? However, there are a lot of Ascension teachings out there these days, in the New Age channeling movement. And I talk about that here at Christos Avatar, which was created and being run by the fallen angelics. The New Age distorted information is channeled information. The New Age is connected to fallen angelic agendas, okay? That is not my idea or my personal opinion, okay? This is coming straight from the Emerald Order Guardians. The New Age will teach you it's all mind over matter, right? Believe this or believe that, and poof, so it will be. Well, there's a lot of poofs happening out there, but people are still sitting in their chairs. Nobody's de-manifested yet. Nobody's been able to manifest a house like that before their eyes, when they only have 2 pennies in their pocket, okay? There's a lot of promises being made in the New Age channeling movement and with what we call partial and or false Ascension teachings. That are teaching you part of the mechanics of the way, the mind is indeed supposed to be able to, as a spirit, what it desires into matter. But what is not being taught is what is stopping that process from working, functioning, or being effective, where each one of us would not have to worry about life because we would be able to manifest what we desire. Okay. We can use positive thinking. We can use affirmations. I am this now. I am whole now. Okay. I'm de-manifesting now. Well, still here. And that is the beginning of learning to use the mental body more effectively. But if it was that simple, you would de-manifest now once you gave the command. But the reason the commands don't jump into immediate action in our 3D world is because there's a distortion taking place between our mind, our thought patterns, and we as spirit desiring to do something, and the chemical realities in the body and the energy realities behind them. There are distortions taking place in the templates that are taking what our intention is and doing things to it, and it comes out to be something different in the hologram. Now, since what's called the Lucifer Rebellion of 25,500 BC, there's been something wrong with the planetary grids and the way they're running frequency. There's been a problem in the electromagnetic fields on our planet, and that has created a severe mutation in the DNA of all life forms on the planet. Now, there was a time, once upon a time, when life on Earth had what's called a variable-based genetic code. The key word there being variable versus no variation. That means the genetic alphabet, which are the chemical components of the DNA chains, were made out of a different amount of chemicals. A frog would have one amount of chemical combinations. A human would have another amount, variable. A tree would have another amount. But right now, science were amazed to find out, when they started to get into DNA, that everything appears to have what's called a base 4 genetic alphabet. That literally only 4 chemicals that combine in different combinations are what make up the gene code of all things on Earth. So they assume that this is the way nature intended it. They assume that it's normal. That's not normal. Okay, it's a horrific, appalling genetic mutation. This whole planet right now is under a base 4 genetic mutation, what the Emerald Order Guardians call the Checkerboard DNA Mutation. That is caused because of the intentional distortion in the electromagnetic fields of our planet. It's a hideous technology that was installed in Earth's Templar in 25,500 BC by the Luciferian ETs called Marduk Anunnaki. I talk about the Anunnaki, and I made a video about this called the Marduk Anunnaki Battlestar Nibiru Planet 9 Human DNA Mutation. I will share the link up here with you in the description below. Now, as we get deeper into the Kathara teachings, we're going to learn how this electromagnetic field distortion on the planet could actually affect the DNA of all life forms. and how that could actually happen, because we're going to learn about something called the Planetary Biofeed Interface System, which is the system by which primal life force currents come through from Source God, through the universal matrix, into the galactic matrix, into the planetary matrix, and then into the bodies of everything on planet Earth. This is how we have our consciousness connection to primal energy, which is the primal consciousness and intelligence of Source God. These life force energies are supposed to flow in a very specific way. We get energy fed to us from the planet. This is how our spirit downloads into our body. It goes through the planetary grids and back into our fields. But because the planetary grids have been damaged, our Mother Earth Tara Gaia here, our planet is ill. It has been ill since this 25,500 BC Lucifer rebellion. Actually, before that. But the real illness set in that timeline. So this mutation has existed in the gene code that has blocked out most of the DNA. It's done that by blocking out most of the DNA template. So we're going to learn about what a DNA template is, as opposed to the chemical DNA. We're going to learn about the body systems, the interwoven subtle energy bodies, and also the chakras and the meridians and the what's called axial tonal lines, and things called Huva bodies and Kathara grids and crystal seals that are all part of the regulatory system of our DNA template, all which work together to create what manifests as the chemical DNA chains. Now, the reason we are stuck here is because most of our DNA has been turned off. What science looks at now and calls junk DNA, it's not junk, by the way, which are sequences of DNA that appear to not produce proteins. They appear to be dormant and don't do anything. They just sit there in the DNA chains. Well, they didn't always sit there, okay? Once upon a time, they were filled with things that created chemicals, created proteins, created building blocks for life. And as we work within Kathara, we will be able to trace where the distortions are. And we don't need a laboratory to begin the process of DNA reverse mutation of the genome, the human genome, which means bringing it back to its original base 12 potential. Okay, base 12 versus base 4 means there was 12 chemical components versus 4 that made up the DNA chains on a physical level. It meant there were 12 strand templates on the subtle body levels that, when it works right, they come into manifestation, manifest the chemicals, and with those chemicals, we are able to hold 12 dimensions of consciousness. Our original prototype angelic human, okay, which is the consciousness of what is known as an avatar. We are all born to be avatars. That is our human heritage, okay? That is the true human identity. We are here living on Earth. It is not the intended divine blueprint of this planetary system. What is happening here has hung us up in an evolutionary time warp where we're actually de-evolving instead of moving forward in our evolution back into our full avatar expression that we were created to be. It's not just humans that are being affected by this particular horrific genetic mutation. Every life form is on this planet, because every life form is connected to the planetary grid, is suffering right now. You know, animals are trapped in a very unnatural relationship where they have to energy vampire off of each other, which means they have to kill each other in order to simply sustain. That's where you get your food chain, by the way. You know, nourishing yourself with mutated animal DNA. That's not natural either. Eating animals is natural on planets that are not able to run higher frequency currents or the primal life force currents like us, right? If this planet were running the full spectrum of 15-dimensional currents, and particularly those first 12 of those 15, it would be very different here. I mean, lions and lambs would lay down together, humans would not kill each other. It would be the type of reality that our holy books have promised us exists, a reality that is very heavenly indeed. The beginning of returning the potentials and having a heaven on earth starts with each person, because human beings were created as an angelic species that was appointed as the guardians of this planet, okay? We were supposed to help the other life forms on this planet to evolve in their full expression of their divine blueprints, okay? We were supposed to be loving keepers of the planetary Templar complex, also called Stargate complex, which is something we'll talk about in future workshops, that has something to do with Stargates. But somewhere along the line, we got into trouble. And right now we're like functioning with the animals, with the plants in a way that's like completely not organic for our consciousness. And there's a pain that every one of us carries. It is a soul pain, a very deep soul pain that knows, well, something has been robbed from us. Some of us, turn that pain into anger. Some people are born angry, okay? They carry that feeling, that knowing that they have somehow been like victimized. There is a victimization taking place here, but there is a point of our consciousness that exists in the higher dimensional fields where you start to understand the victimizer game and you don't get trapped in it anymore. But when you have your consciousness shut off in D3 and somebody tells you, well, victimizer is just a game, you don't have to play it, it doesn't seem quite real. Nice concept, right? But it doesn't change the fact that some of us feel awful, but okay, the New Age channeling movement, you're manifesting this now. okay, I take responsibility. I'm manifesting this. How do I stop manifesting this? How do I get control over my life so I can live a way that is peaceful and loving and joyful? So I can feel that I am one with Source. So I have a loving relationship with God and with other things. How do I bring that potential back? The beginning of that is bringing back the consciousness, the part of your consciousness that right now holds that knowledge in a higher dimensional field. The way you can bring that consciousness back in this, to open up the conduits in the subtle body anatomy, that will open up the chemicals in the DNA body template, that will allow those frequencies of consciousness to come in your mind and your body here. And then you can have access to your higher consciousness. This is why Kathara biospiritual healing is not only a system that will begin the process of healing the physical body, it is a spiritual healing system in the greatest sense of the word. It is the healing system that will begin the process of bringing you as an avatar consciousness literally back into focus here in the 3D, where you don't have to feel trapped anymore, okay? You don't have to feel like you have to resign yourself to the fact that, well, death and illness and taxes are the only thing that life is about down here, okay? So this is an introduction to the Kathara Workshop playlist series. There is actually a lot more to introduce you to, which may take a few videos before we get into the more technical information. So I sincerely thank all of you for watching this video about Kathara healing. If you like what you have learned today in this video, please like and subscribe. And also you guys consider supporting this work. There is a donation link below, or you can also become a paid member, or even purchase one of my crystals or artworks on my Etsy shop. And I link that below. Thank you so much. I can't do this without you. And you definitely want to click on the next video that comes on the screen here, because in that video, we'll be talking about the fear of death, also about near-death experience, the CDT plates, the holographic disc records, and the original translations of those that go with them, called the Mahabharata Sacred Text, the teachings of the inner Christ, also about the real Jesus, called Jeshua Sananda Melchizedek, the sacred universal law of one, the divine blueprint, the one self or God self, the sinner concept, the Church of Rome, the Illuminati collective, control dogma, Marduk Anunnaki, creator God stories, and the Tower of Babel. So you definitely want to click on that video. Thank you, Starseed family. I'll see you in the next video in this playlist series. Ami love, peace, namaste, holy ones. Machiwa.